is, ethical hacking versus penetration testing. So essentially, it's important to know that ethical hacking and penetration testing are actually the same thing. They typically refer to the same exact thing and can be used interchangeably. Ethical hackers conduct penetration tests for their clients or employers. All right. So throughout the course, you're probably going to hear me use both. I like to lean towards saying when conducting penetration tests versus saying, while ethical hacking, because it just sounds a little bit better and it's a little bit more direct, on what we're doing, and that's what you'll be doing if you ever become an ethical hacker. Okay, so let's talk about some types of ethical hacking. All right, there's three different types. The first one is white box hacking. This is performed. This is when you do ethical hacking and you have full knowledge of the systems, applications, or networks that you'll be attempting to penetrate. So, for example, you'll know exact IP addresses. You'll know, specifics about the application or the network. Where you need to look, where some vulnerabilities might be, just so that you can test them. That's white box. So it's pretty much full disclosure is what white box hacking is. Now then we have gray box. You know how people say, the gray area. This is gray box. So it's you kind of know some stuff, but then you kind of don't. So they're gonna give you some information about the network or a system or an application, but you're not giving full details. So this is usually the case when a company like a client might not want you to have full access or full knowledge of maybe their application or their network, so they're not going to give you too much information, and you kind of just have to go about it yourself. So now the last one would be black box hacking, which is pretty much when you have no information at all and they just give you a public IP address, or they just drop you on a network, or just throw you an application and say, hey, hack this, let me know what you can find. And this is the one where you really get to flex your hacker muscle a lot, because you really have to go through the different processes that we're going to go over to make sure that you cover all of your bases, gather all the possible information, and attempt any potential exploits that you might find. So now let's go over the different types of penetration testing that you may be conducting if you were to become a penetration testing professional. So there's various types of penetration testing that you might run into when you become a professional, and these include internal penetration testing, external penetration testing, and web application penetration testing. So during this course, you're going to learn various techniques and attacks that you can use for each one of these types of testing. So first, let's go over internal penetration testing. So this type of penetration testing done to simulate what an attacker that has made their way into your network can gain access to. Now, it's also a way that companies like to figure out, what's just vulnerable on their network, you typically would be on site and connected to the network physically or through Wi-Fi, or you'll be remotely connected, via like a VPN, and, given the right to break into as many machines as possible and find valuable, sensitive information like, company financial information, employee personal information, different stuff like that. That's the goal, kind of like of an internal penetration test. You want to see what can happen if someone is inside your network and see where you need to improve your security. So now next up, we're going to talk about external penetration testing. Now, this is the type of penetration testing that's typically done from the outside of a network, and it tests the ability for hackers to break in from the outside. So you're typically going to conduct this kind of test with a public IP address for the network and try to break in. So you're going to be given a public IP address, and we all have public IP address on the internet. No matter where you are, if you're connected to the internet, you have a public IP address. So technically, anyone on the internet can find you. And if you have some type of service running that might be vulnerable, and you can see that from the outside, hackers can potentially take advantage of that. So that's why external penetration testing is very important, because hackers usually come in from the outside. And if you have something sitting out there vulnerable, they can literally, within an instant, launch off an exploit and get into your network. And then you're screwed at that point. So now let's talk about web application or website penetration testing. So this type of penetration testing focuses on attempting to exploit vulnerabilities in a web application or a website and see where it's vulnerable. So you want to test this from the outside and from the inside. Typically, you want to see, can someone break in to the application from the outside and bypass, authentication, or can someone with like basic rights that logged into the application access something that they shouldn't be able to, via trying to exploit the application. That's something that's very important, and companies care a lot about this because if they might be collecting private information and storing it, they want to make sure that their application is safe, because breaches like this cost, if your application were to get breached, it costs companies thousands or even millions of dollars depending on what happened, how big the breach was, different things. So that's why web application penetration testing is very important.